luckiest girl alive because I've got Lady Colin Campbell with me. And everybody that I spoke to this morning wanted to be here too because they know she's going to be outrageous, because she always is. And I absolutely love it. And I'm here to interview her this afternoon.
Well, Nadia, thank you so much for coming down.
I know, I love it here. I mean, every room is picture ready for whatever's going to happen next, and anything could happen.
I feel like a cloth that's been totally wrung out. I don't think anybody expected her to die right then. I mean, I kept on saying, it's a miracle if she lasts till the end of the year, but even if the miracle happens, there's no way she's lasting beyond the middle of next year. I mean, we both know really how she died.
Yes.
And, where everybody's dancing around it. And,
yes.
And you know, as with all chronic conditions with old people, you very seldom die of what you're suffering from. Something else intervenes and wafts you off really rather mercifully. She embodied all of the truly noble virtues. She was a truly noble person. And, you know, she took being the Supreme Governor of the Church of England very seriously. And she lived her beliefs. I mean, she really was an absolute example to everybody of not only what a superb monarch should be, but what a decent, superb human being should be.
Absolutely, and you felt that you could emanate her. You know, there's something, because her virtues are actually quite simple.
That's right.
Yes, they're real, pure and simple. I think that's what helped us feel that, well, we can be good too. Maybe, you know, when we've all got a divorce in the family and we've all got problems, she could help us along with our own lives, which is what any monarch should do.
I agree with that. I think that she showed people the compassionate way of dealing with undesirable situations. And I mean, let's remember, she was 90-something, and when the major troubles started, and I'm not referring to Prince Philip's death, because I mean, we all knew as well that he'd been very ill for a long time.
Yes.
And it's a miracle that he lasted as long as he did. But she knew he was going to die sooner rather than later. And I think she was, on some level, quite prepared, although, of course, you were never completely prepared. And I think it was wonderful in a funny sort of way that COVID intervened, because it gave them time together that they otherwise wouldn't have had.
So, tell me, at the beginning, you were in Jamaica, but you look Slavic and not Jamaican.
Well, may I make the point, which is a bit of a sore point with many Jamaicans, that the Jamaican national motto is out of many, one people.
Yes.
And at the time of independence, they emphasized the range with having all of the colors of the different races represented. I suppose maybe I look Slavic because I've got a lot of Slavic blood in me, but I've also got a lot of Mediterranean blood in me. When I was a child growing up, was wonderful. I mean, if you were from families like ours. But they had very little crime. Admittedly, most people didn't have very much money, and some people had none. Those of us who were fortunate enough to have two coppers to rub together had the most magical lives.
How did you come to England?
I was brought up in Jamaica from birth till the age of 18.
Yes.
Then I went to the Fashion Institute in New York. And then I was so bored with studying fashion. I mean, I can't tell you how boring it was. So I decided I was going to leave and become a writer. And I interviewed a male model called Nick Cortland at the Paul Wagner Agency. And they asked me to model.
So that's fantastic.
My father then intervened because he was furious. He said that I needed to go back to FIT, which I did, very reluctantly, but I did. And so I had to graduate from FIT. And then after I used to do some modeling and some designing, then I chucked designing. And of course, in my generation, it was your duty to get married.
So is that what you did? You came to England, you decided
Well,
you'd marry an Englishman.
One thing led to another, and eventually I met Colin Campbell and married him.
You're an independent creature, so how on earth did you stay married? I mean, how long did it last?
I married him on the 23rd of March 1974, and by the November I asked for a divorce because sadly he had a huge problem with drink and drugs and uncontrollable fists. This side of my face was reconstructed 6 weeks after our marriage, and that was to me a huge shock, and I couldn't believe that such a thing had happened. And as soon as the pattern started, because third time around you realize what's coming, I said I want a divorce, and that really brought him up sharply. And he and his brother decided they were going to make money out of the situation. And so they sold various lies about me to the Sunday people. The whole business in 74 and 75 was front page news on practically every gutter press publication all over the world. It was terrible. And I mean, it follows you to the extent that thereafter, every time you enter a room, everybody believes they know more about you than you know about yourself. And then you have the dilemma of how are you going to cope with it? So I simply ignored it.
So you probably fully understand what Meghan and Harry go through now on a daily basis.
I understand what Meghan and Harry are about. I understand what they go through. I also understand that they have invited in the press, and they have sought the attention that they are getting. I never sought the attention I got. But Harry and Meghan they want people to buy a lie. I simply wanted people to stop buying the lie. Our situations were completely different because I simply wanted the press to represent me fairly by speaking the truth. Harry and Meghan have wanted the press to represent them unfairly by telling lies that misrepresent them as being far more wonderful and far
altruistic, really.
More altruistic and far more everything than they actually are. They are basically like dictators who are trying to shut down any form of censorship, any form of disagreement, who actually are basically trying to cram the lie, their narrative, down everybody's throats.
Which is racism, which is very tiresome, you know?
Well, the racism is very dangerous.
And it's very dangerous.
How could she have been a victim of racism? First of all, she passed for white until she married him or met him. And, you know, the whole thing is offensive. They are outraged that Meghan, who was given such a welcome, could have so mischievously used the colour card to damage race relations throughout the nation and throughout the Commonwealth, just so that she could boost herself. I mean, you talk about an opportunity missed.
Also, she could have had it so different. I mean, she could have everything, which would be much cleverer. I mean, they could have been the golden foursome, going to open everything, and apart from everything else, everybody loved her when she was first here.
That's right.
And I think her biggest mistake was possibly her father.
She was offered help for both her parents. She accepted it for her mother. She declined it for her father. She exposed him to the most awful harassment for 18 months. You know, she went out of her way to denigrate her father and set him up. It is my view that she never, ever wanted her father hair at all.
But the fact is, you sort of welcome them because that's the one that gives you the kudos. You know, she doesn't realise this would have given her kudos.
But you see, she told Harry so many lies about her past. Her father was an ever-present danger to her. He was going to expose her. Having created the situation by creating a false identity that Harry found admirable, she then had the dilemma of if her father and her sibling and her other aunts and uncles from the other side of the family. So it wasn't only the white ones, it was the black ones as well.
Yeah, she cut them out too.
The only person she could afford to embrace was her mother, who, like many people with her background, have learned the art of silence. So everybody else had to be cut out and was cut out.
I felt sorry for her that, you know, she's continually nagged, but then she's bringing it upon herself, you know.
I have no sympathy of any consequence for Meghan Markle. You know, the leopard all of a sudden has taken a mud bath, and all of a sudden you think it's no longer a leopard, that it's actually a very nice big domestic cat that's a brown domestic cat. Well, it's a leopard. And as soon as it's ready, it's gonna take another bite out of your leg or arm.
What do you think is the end result of all of this? I mean, this is like a terrible, terrible story, really. I mean, what do you think will happen to Harry?
I know what the British family thought, because I said it in my book,
Yes.
that they were worried that when the end came, there would be a level of finality where Harry was concerned that would be truly distressing for all concerned, except, of course, her.
Which he would play to that.
The German relations actually think the end will be even more graphic. And more than that, I think it would be indecorous to say.
Yes, absolutely.
But I do not see a happy ending.
You know, they always say that the evil person has to have an easy escape, don't they? I mean, you must let them keep their pride and let them go.
Because, you know, they are so corrupted and so poisoned and so removed from the reality of what the situation truly is, that to get back to where they were at would, certainly with Harry, I think, take a lot of time and a lot of therapy and a lot of understanding. And I'm not sure he has the intelligence or the ability character-wise.
But he has the strength to go and fight a battle. So let's hope he gets his strength back.
Well, I have seen with my own parents where, I mean, my father was a far more decent and stronger man than Harry. And I mean, he obviously knew my mother was a manipulative and a really rather vicious liar. And he'd go along with it. How does an addict square the love of the source of his addiction? There's an addictive element to it. And with Harry, there's also the Oedipal element to it. Because Meghan, of course, has presented herself as the living embodiment of Diana, and that she's so vulnerable, she needs to be protected. I mean, first of all, Diana was never particularly vulnerable. And secondly, Meghan is definitely not vulnerable. And let's remember, Meghan got married at the age Diana died, and any excuses you have for Diana do not apply to Meghan.
Absolutely not.
Diana was a 19-year-old girl from a nice family, and she got married, I think, when she was just 20.
Yes.
Engaged at 19. So you could say she had the naivety of youth. Meghan has no naivety. Meghan has the experience of the well-trafficked individual who has been around the block many a time.
And it's not her first marriage?
Definitely not.
No.
Definitely not. I understand the dilemma of any father who loves his child.
Yes.
You can't negotiate with them. There is nothing you can do except be very firm and keep them very firmly in their box. Anything else is interpreted as weakness. And anything else that you do gives them the opportunity to take further advantage and create further mayhem. Is he equipped to deal with this? To the extent that he went through a far lesser version of this with Diana, you would hope the answer was yes, but I know the answer is no, because he allowed Diana to blackmail him into coughing up £17 million that he had no intention of coughing up, when she simply overtly resorted to blackmail using the magical name George Smith, you know? And so he's rolled over and allowed himself to be completely pummeled once. And he most likely has forgotten that the only thing that possibly saved his bacon was that Diana died. I mean, he will feel, oh, well, she and he were getting on much better by the time she died. And that is true. But would that state of amity have continued? I'm not so sure. And any virtues that Diana had, Meghan doesn't have. So I'm not so sure he's actually well equipped to, of past experience, to apply that past experience to this present situation. I take comfort in the fact that Camilla has her feet on the ground and knows an operator when she sees one.
Because my immediate thing would be to have empathy, because I like that, you know. I would like to say, Meghan, please don't do this. You know, you're going to ruin everything for yourself and for everybody else. But of course, that sort of personality would immediately think, my God, who is she, you know, for giving me this advice? No. And use it.
Yes, well, she'd also think, aren't you a patsy? My goodness.
Yeah,
you know?
I'll use her.
Yeah, you know, it's, I mean, people like that, they use your empathy against you. So you need to understand what you're dealing with. I mean,
people are very difficult to know how to manipulate, because they're way ahead of you. I mean, they'll just use anything that you say.
Well, you see, I think you don't manipulate people like that. What you do is you draw very firm boundaries. That doesn't mean that you don't have their measure, but I don't think it's possible to predict what a devious, manipulative person will do. And every time you thought, well, she's have learned her lesson. People like that, they have learned their lesson, and their lesson is you're a patsy. To them, nobody is a human being. Everybody represents supply, food, or however you want to put it. They don't relate to us as human beings. They are, in their mind, the only human being, and we are all there to be used. You can't anticipate what people like that are going to do.
It's very, very interesting, because actually you've never actually said that online at all, that, you know, or to anyone really, that she's got a psychological problem, in fact.
Who, Meghan?
Yes.
Oh.
You've sort of hinted, yeah.
I speak to medical people who are people I know about this, because, I mean, this is a national problem.
Yes, it's
actually
a disaster.
An international problem, because, you know, it spills over into America, it spills over into the Commonwealth. I mean, the Commonwealth is something like 1/3 of the world's population.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, this is actually a huge problem. And there is little doubt in their minds that Meghan is a malignant narcissist with antisocial aspects to her personality. Or, as Valentine Lowe in his book, which I would recommend that everybody buy, he's quoted one of the courtiers saying that she is a narcissistic sociopath. Of her conduct, I agree with that. She is she displays definite signs of narcissism, sociopathy, manipulativeness, and hysteria.
Yes.
She does display aspects of a histrionic personality as well. Of course, the one thing I learned writing Daughter of Narcissus, because I had to study the whole matter of narcissism and other personality disorders, is that you don't usually have one personality disorder. You have a primary personality disorder with features of secondary and tertiary personality disorders. And I think she has 4. I think she's a fully blown narcissist. I think she is a fully blown sociopath. I think she is truly manipulative. And I think she actually is also histrionic. And you are dealing with a nightmare scenario, because you see Diana, who did have a personality disorder, but it was a borderline personality disorder born of the terrible problems that she suffered from as a child because of her parents' divorce. Borderline personality disorder people suffer at least as much as everybody else around them, sometimes even more. That's not true of narcissists. That's not true of sociopaths. That's not true of manipulatives. And that's not true of histrionics.
Diana had one amazing quality, though. She had light. You know, she'd walk into a room and she had light.
Yeah.
And whatever her character really was, we didn't expect her to be as pure as everybody thought she was. But she had light, and she also had charm.
Yes.
And that must never be forgotten, because that's what she had.
And she had
Meghan
empathy.
hasn't got that.
And she had empathy as well. She really, there was a very soft-hearted quality to her. I mean, she could be brutally tough as well. But I think that's where her borderline personality disorder issue came in, because the intact part of her personality, the healthy part, was wonderful.
Exactly.
But then the destroyed part, but she had a lovely personality that was distorted by circumstance. Meghan doesn't have a lovely personality. Meghan has the superficial charm of the adventuress on the make.
Yes.
She has the stealthiness of the predator who is quiet until it's ready to pounce. Meghan understands. Already. What she has to avoid is a Sarah York situation. She can't leave a marriage with little or nothing. She needs a big nest egg, and there was no way she was going to be able to acquire for herself, or through him or with him, a huge nest egg in the event of departure. So she needed to get him away from her to there, and her ambition from the word go was to enter the royal family, create
havoc.
No, to create the public persona of that she's adored by the public and she's such a success. Behind the scenes, making it clear that she's not happy, that she's going to find every reason why she shouldn't stay. And she set out to antagonize all his friends and everybody, make sure that she wouldn't fit in, by making sure that she, by not fitting in, would then have an excuse to go back to America, taking him, but she intended it to be half in, half out. And it's the Queen who put her foot down, because her game plan from the word go was marry him, be a success initially. Oh, I'm so miserable, you know. All those aristocrats, they make me feel so lonely. I mean, so that she would get him in a position where she would be able to march fully for 50% of the time, and then top up the prestige by coming back here, doing royal things, which would feed the money bank beautifully and top up the money jar perfectly, and then she'd be back into America for more marching, and the Queen scuppered that. And
Doesn't she realise that all this marching is a bit common?
she is a vulgarian of the highest order,
Yes.
and she is actually distastefully greedy. But from her point of view, it is a necessary problem, because you see, had she stayed and had she done what everybody expected her to do and what she promised to do,
And that she said she would be good
and
at.
that's right, and she said she would be good at, which was join the royal family and provide a public service, she would have had everything paid for. Remember, her clothing allowance for the 2 years that she was a royal, and she only did 72 engagements, was over £2 million, which was collectively more than every single Queen, Grand Duchess, Royal Duchess, and Royal Princess in the whole of Europe and the United Kingdom put together. Figure that one out. And she did fewer engagements than anybody, and she was one as opposed to however many, I mean, at least 2 or 3 hands worth, or 4 hands worth of royal women, and her clothing allowance alone. So she was being handsomely compensated, but it's not moolah, it's not community property.
But I don't
it's
understand
not
why she wants this.
You know, she's the sort of woman who marries a man and understands what she can get out of it, and also figures out, well, sooner or later, my river may change course, or my river inevitably will change course, or I can only keep my river flowing in that direction for so long before the water runs out and I simply just can't do it anymore, at which point I need moolah, I need a divorce.
You think she's heading that way now?
I think she went into the relationship with that. I think she's executed every turn with that in mind. And I think, let us see what happens. No better option comes up. Meghan is quite likely to stay with Harry. She, I think, entered the relationship with the view she could do a Jackie, which is also what...
Jackie and Asses.
Yeah, I think that's what this one has done. And she thought that she would be able to do a Jackie Onassis. However, what she didn't understand was Jackie Onassis was a revered public figure. And Jackie, who actually I knew slightly as well, Jackie was actually a lady. And Jackie was actually a decent person. She might have been very materialistic, but she was very honourable, and she was a very decent person.
No, but she was an elegant person as well, and, chic.
Well, it's the difference between a fine racehorse and a very broken down donkey. But she, funnily enough, had she stayed in the royal family and had she pretended to be as magnanimous as we all thought she was at first, she would have been ideally situated to make the move on to some billionaire's yacht. But you see, to Meghan Markle and amid scabies, even a second son like Harry is fabulous. I mean, to us, he's just a second son. But to them, he's, oh, my goodness, that's fabulous. Oh my goodness, I've not seen such a juicy antelope to pounce upon for years, if ever. Ooh, delicious.
It makes me think that why didn't MI5 or whoever deals with these things check her out beforehand? And why didn't they stop all of this?
You know, the reality is that everybody knew what she was about. Harry insisted. Meghan has appealed to Harry's existent darker side. That because had he not had an existent darker side, she couldn't have gained the firm toehold that she did. she has exploited, and he has enjoyed her exploiting. Remember, Harry's the one who said Meghan's capable of anything, and thrills to the complete lack of boundaries and lack of scruples, and that she will create havoc, because that appeals to Harry's destructive side. We all know that everybody knows what Meghan is and was, and we all have chapter and verse on Meghan privately that we never speak about publicly, because of the fact that Harry is the one who, when his grandparents tried to prevent the marriage, told them, if you don't allow me to marry Meghan, you will be accused of racism. He told, I quote it I cleaned it up slightly. I cleaned it up slightly.
I love the way you say cleaned it up slightly.
Because what I said is a slightly sanitized version of what was really said. And then you have to ask yourself, if there are only 3 people in the room, the Queen, Prince Philip, and Harry. Harry was determined, and they tried to, and the Queen said, when Prince Philip said, Harry, you know, we step out with actresses, we don't marry them, and Harry shot off. The Queen then tried to intervene, and Harry shut her up and told her they didn't like it. They would be accused of racism.
Of course.
And they had no choice in the matter, and they had no choice but to allow the marriage. If they didn't like it, they were just gonna have to suck it up. And she said she'd never heard the expression suck it up before, but she didn't need an explanation, because as soon as she heard it, she knew exactly what it meant. And I had never heard the expression before when it was recounted to me. So Harry is entirely to blame for the fact that he overrode every single negative report and misgiving about Meghan in his determination to marry her.
She must have been amazing in bed.
She is, I understand. I was told by somebody who is in a position to speak with some authority on the subject that she is fearsomely good in bed. The word was fearsomely good in bed.
Oh, lovely. You've written the book about people of colour and royals, so you understand fully what it means and the use of racism.
First of all, Meghan Markle wasn't the first person of colour to marry into the royal family. Where do they get off with all of that? Meghan Markle is saying all of a sudden that
because it's Black Lives Matter, and
it's blackmail. It's what
and it's called blackmail.
It's blackmail.
And I think with that, we wait and see what happens. And we'll wait and see what happens pretty soon, I think.
Well, let us see, because I don't think it's going to end well. And I unfortunately think that Meghan has played things so badly that unless she's going to drift off on the yacht of some very disturbed billionaire, I think we have a lot more of a bun fest to look forward to, or deplore might be a better way of putting it. Thank you so much for coming,
Thank you very much,
Amanda.
darling. But thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Okay.